She was 3 days away from losing her children to foster care when the estate agent called about a property no one else would touch. The former home of Robin Williams, abandoned for years, available for immediate occupancy at zero cost if she'd agree to be the caretaker. Everyone said the place was cursed, that Williams' ghost haunted the halls, that anyone who entered never came out the same. But Sarah Chen had 3 kids sleeping in a shelter and nowhere else to turn. She took the keys without reading the fine print. What she found hidden beneath the library floor would be worth $295 million and reveal a secret Robin Williams took to his grave.
If you're enjoying this deep dive into the story, hit the subscribe button and let us know in the comments from where in the world you are watching from today.
The fluorescent lights in the Alameda County Emergency Shelter flickered at 5:47 in the morning when Sarah's phone buzzed. She was already awake, had been for hours, listening to the sounds of 40 other families breathing, snoring, crying in the darkness. Her daughter Lily, age 8, was curled against her left side. Her son Marcus, 6, sprawled across her lap. And baby Zoe, just turned 2, slept in a donated pack and play beside the cot, her tiny fist wrapped around the corner of a threadbare blanket. Sarah's back ached. Her neck was stiff. Every muscle in her body screamed from weeks of sleeping on surfaces that weren't meant for sleeping. But she didn't move. Didn't disturb her children. These few hours when they were peaceful, when they weren't asking questions she couldn't answer, were the only mercy she had left. The phone buzzed again. She carefully extracted herself from under the kids and walked to the hallway, her bare feet cold on the linoleum floor. The number was unfamiliar. She almost didn't answer. Scammers love to target people at shelters, people desperate enough to believe anything. But something made her swipe to accept the call. Hello? Her voice was rough from not speaking. Is this Sarah Chen? A woman's voice, professional, brisk. Yes. My name is Patricia Summers. I'm with Bay Area Estate Management. We handle properties in crisis situations, foreclosures, estates, that sort of thing. I got your name from the housing assistance coordinator at the shelter. Sarah's stomach dropped. I didn't apply for any housing assistance. I know. She gave me several names of families in particularly difficult circumstances. Families with children. Families who needed immediate placement. Patricia paused. I have a property. It's unconventional. But it's available right now. Today. What's the catch? The property belonged to a celebrity. Robin Williams. The actor and comedian. After his death, the estate went through probate, and eventually the family decided to sell. But the house has been empty for almost 10 years. It's in rough shape. The family can't afford to maintain it, and they can't find a buyer willing to take on the restoration costs. So they've authorized us to find a caretaker. Someone who'll live there, maintain basic upkeep, and keep vandals out. Sarah's heart was pounding. For how long? Minimum 1 year. Possibly longer. No rent. Utilities covered. You'd be responsible for general maintenance and any damage that occurs during your tenancy. In exchange, you get a roof over your head and time to get back on your feet. Why me? You don't even know me. Because you have 3 kids and nowhere to go. Because the social worker I spoke to said you're 2 weeks away from losing custody if you don't secure stable housing. And because everyone else I've called has turned it down. Why? Patricia hesitated. The property has a reputation. People say it's haunted. Say strange things happen there. Most people won't even tour it. Sarah looked back at the shelter, at the narrow cots lined up like soldiers, at the families crammed into a space meant for half as many people. She thought about Lily asking when they'd have their own room again. About Marcus wetting the bed because he was too scared to use the shared bathroom at night. About Zoe, who'd stopped talking almost entirely since they'd lost the apartment. When can I see it? How about this morning? Patricia picked her up at 8 o'clock in a silver SUV that smelled like leather and expensive perfume. Sarah had dressed the kids in their least worn-out clothes and braided Lily's hair as neatly as she could with a broken comb. They looked presentable. Barely. The drive took 40 minutes, winding through neighborhoods that got progressively more expensive. Sprawling estates. Manicured lawns. Gates with security cameras. Sarah felt more out of place with every mile. Finally, they turned onto a private road that climbed into the hills. At the end of a long driveway, behind a rusted iron gate, stood the house. It was massive. Mediterranean style with a red tile roof, cream-colored stucco walls, and tall arched windows that looked like empty eyes. The landscaping had gone wild. Vines crawled up the walls. Trees pressed close to the structure. The fountain in the circular driveway was dry and cracked, filled with dead leaves. But it was beautiful. Even in decay, Sarah could see the bones of something extraordinary. This was Robin Williams' house, she whispered. One of them. He owned several properties. This one was his retreat. The place he came to when he needed privacy, needed to think. After his death in 2014, the estate kept it for a few years, but eventually they couldn't justify the maintenance costs. It's been sitting empty since 2016. They got out of the car. The kids stayed close to Sarah, their eyes wide. Even Zoe seemed impressed, pointing at the house and making a sound that might have been big. Patricia unlocked the front door with an old-fashioned key. It swung open on hinges that groaned like something in pain. Inside was darkness and the smell of dust and time. Patricia found a light switch. Half the lights worked. The ones that did revealed a grand entryway with a curved staircase, tiled floors, and walls painted in warm earth tones. Furniture sat draped in sheets like ghosts. Cobwebs hung from the chandelier. 6 bedrooms. 7 bathrooms. Chef's kitchen. Library. Theater room. Game room. Pool out back, though it's been drained for years. The place is about 8,000 square feet. Sarah couldn't process numbers that large. She'd been living in 200 square feet of shelter space for the past month. They walked through the house slowly. Most of the rooms were in surprisingly good condition considering no one had lived there in nearly a decade. The structure was solid. The roof didn't leak. The windows, though dirty, were intact. It was like the house had been frozen in time, waiting. The library stopped Sarah in her tracks. It was a 2-story room with floor-to-ceiling bookshelves on every wall. A spiral staircase led to a second-level reading loft. Tall windows let in dusty streams of light. And in the center of the room was a massive wooden desk, still covered with papers and books as if someone had just stepped away and forgotten to come back. This was his favorite room, Patricia said quietly. He spent most of his time here when he was at the house. Reading, writing, thinking. Sarah walked to the desk and ran her fingers through the dust. She picked up a book. Leaves of Grass by Walt Whitman. The pages were dog-eared, margins filled with handwritten notes in blue ink. She felt something shift in her chest. This wasn't just a house. It was a sanctuary. A place where someone brilliant and broken had tried to find peace. "I'll take it," she said. Patricia looked relieved. "You're sure? You haven't even seen the second floor." "I'm sure." The paperwork took an hour. Sarah signed form after form, most of which she didn't fully understand. Liability waivers. Maintenance agreements. Non-disclosure clauses about not discussing the property or its history with media. She didn't care. She would have signed anything. By noon, she had keys to a house worth millions. By 1 o'clock, she'd gone back to the shelter, gathered their few belongings, and said goodbye to the social worker who'd been threatening to place her kids in care. By 2 o'clock, they were standing in the grand entryway of Robin Williams' former estate, their garbage bags of clothes piled at their feet, staring at a life they couldn't quite believe was real. "Is this really ours?" Lily asked. "For now," Sarah said. "For as long as we need it." Marcus ran to the staircase and started climbing.
If you find this story engaging, please take a moment to subscribe and enable notifications. It helps us continue producing in-depth content like this.
I want the room with the balcony. I want the princess room. Lily chased after him. Zoe pointed at the chandelier and said, "Sparkle." Sarah stood alone in the entryway, listening to her children's laughter echo through the empty house, and for the first time in 8 months, she felt something that might have been hope. The first night in the house was harder than Sarah expected. The place was too big, too quiet, too full of shadows. Every sound echoed. Every creak of old wood sounded like footsteps. The kids, who'd been excited during the day, grew clingy as darkness fell. They all ended up sleeping together in the master bedroom on the second floor. Sarah dragged in the mattresses from 2 of the other bedrooms and laid them on the floor. They huddled together like they had at the shelter, even though each of them could have had their own enormous room. "Mommy, is there a ghost here?" Lily whispered in the darkness. "No, baby. Just old house sounds." But the lady said people think it's haunted. People think lots of things that aren't true. This house is just a house. A really big, really beautiful house that someone loved very much. The funny man who died. Yes. Robin Williams. He was a comedian and an actor. He made people laugh. Why did he die? Sarah closed her eyes. He was very sad, baby. Sometimes people's sadness gets so big they can't carry it anymore. Were you that sad? Before we came here? Sarah's throat tightened. Sometimes. But I'm getting better. She felt Lily's small hand find hers in the darkness. Me too. The next morning, Sarah woke to sunlight streaming through the massive windows and realized she'd slept through the night for the first time in months. No shelter lights turning on at 5 a.m. No staff walking the aisles doing head counts. No other families' conversations bleeding through thin curtains. Just silence. Peace. Space. She got up carefully, not wanting to wake the kids, and walked downstairs. The kitchen was enormous, commercial-grade appliances that probably cost more than every car Sarah had ever owned combined. She found coffee in the pantry, still sealed, probably from 2016. She brewed a pot and took her cup out to the back patio. The pool was empty, as Patricia had said, its blue tiles faded and cracked. But beyond it was a view that took Sarah's breath away. Hills rolling down to the bay. The San Francisco skyline in the distance. Fog rolling in like a living thing. Robin Williams had stood here. Had drunk coffee here. Had looked at this view and thought whatever thoughts brilliant, sad people think when they're alone. Sarah felt like an imposter. Like she'd broken into someone's life and was pretending it was hers. But she also felt something else. Gratitude. This house, this chance, was more than she deserved. More than she'd hoped for. And she wasn't going to waste it. Over the next few days, they settled into a routine. Sarah enrolled the kids in the local elementary school, using the house address. The school was nice, much nicer than their old one, with art programs and music classes and a playground that looked like it belonged in a park. The first day she dropped them off, she cried in the car for 20 minutes. Relief. Fear. Exhaustion. All of it pouring out at once. She spent her days cleaning the house, room by room. Patricia had left basic cleaning supplies and given her a credit card for household expenses. Sarah used it carefully, buying only what was absolutely necessary. Trash bags. Soap. Light bulbs. She wasn't going to give anyone a reason to take this away from her. The library became her project. She spent hours there, dusting shelves, organizing books, discovering the depth of Robin Williams' collection. Philosophy. Poetry. Biography. Comedy. Science fiction. Classic literature. The man had read everything. She found personal items too. Photos tucked between books. Letters. Postcards. A journal with entries that made her cry. He'd written about his struggles with depression, with addiction, with the pressure of being brilliant and funny when all he wanted was to be quiet and normal. Sarah felt a kinship with him she couldn't explain. They'd never met. They came from completely different worlds. But they both knew what it was like to smile while drowning. One afternoon, about 2 weeks after moving in, Sarah was shelving books when she noticed something odd. One section of the bookshelf on the main floor, near the windows, didn't sit quite flush with the wall. There was a gap, maybe half an inch, that didn't match the other shelves. She pressed on it experimentally. Nothing happened. She tried pulling. Still nothing. Then she noticed a small brass fitting at the corner of the shelf, disguised as decorative metalwork. When she pushed it, something clicked. The entire bookshelf section swung inward on hidden hinges. Behind it was darkness. And stairs. Leading down. Sarah's heart hammered. She pulled out her phone and turned on the flashlight. The beam cut through the darkness, revealing stone steps descending into what looked like a basement or tunnel. She should have called Patricia. Should have asked permission. But curiosity and something deeper, some instinct she couldn't name, made her step inside. The stairs were steep and narrow. 23 steps. She counted. At the bottom was a corridor, maybe 5 feet wide, with stone walls and a low ceiling. The air smelled like earth and concrete and something else, something metallic. She followed the corridor for maybe 30 feet. It ended at a heavy wooden door, aged and solid, with an old-fashioned iron handle. She tried it. Locked. Sarah examined the door more closely. There was a keyhole, old-fashioned, the kind that required a skeleton key. She thought about the keys Patricia had given her. There had been several she hadn't identified yet, keys that didn't seem to fit any of the house's normal locks. She went back upstairs, found the key ring, and returned to the tunnel. The 5th key she tried slid into the lock and turned with a satisfying click. The door swung open. Beyond it was a room. Maybe 20 feet square. And covering every surface, stacked on shelves, piled on tables, stored in climate-controlled cases, was art. Paintings. Sculptures. Photographs. Prints. Some were small, no bigger than a book. Others were massive, taking up entire sections of wall. And even with Sarah's complete lack of art knowledge, she could tell these weren't cheap reproductions. These were real. Original. Valuable. She stepped inside slowly, her phone light sweeping across the collection. She saw signatures she recognized even though she'd never studied art. Warhol. Basquiat. Hockney. Rothko. Names she'd heard mentioned in movies or read in magazine articles about wealthy collectors. On one wall was a painting of a woman in blue, her face turned away, the brushstrokes so alive Sarah felt like the woman might move. The signature in the corner read Diebenkorn. On another wall was a massive canvas of color fields, blues and purples bleeding into each other. Rothko was scrawled in the corner. There were photographs too. Original prints from what Sarah assumed were famous photographers. Ansel Adams. Diane Arbus. Robert Mapplethorpe. And sculptures. Bronze. Marble. Wood. Pieces that looked ancient and pieces that looked modern. Sarah stood in the center of the room, slowly turning, trying to process what she was seeing. This wasn't just a collection. This was a museum. A private museum hidden beneath a house that had sat empty for almost a decade. Why? Why would Robin Williams hide this? Why hadn't the estate found it? Why wasn't it in a gallery somewhere? She saw a filing cabinet in the corner and opened the top drawer. Inside were folders, meticulously organized. Each one labeled with an artist's name, a title, and a date. She pulled out the first one. Basquiat, Untitled, Skull, 1982. Inside was documentation. Purchase receipt. Certificate of authenticity. Appraisal. The appraisal was dated 2013, a year before William's death. The estimated value was listed as $6.2 million. Sarah's hands started shaking. She pulled out another folder. Rothko Blue and Purple 1951. Appraised at $14.8 million. Another. Diebenkorn Ocean Park No. 67 1973. Appraised at $8.3 million. She went through folder after folder. Warhol. Hockney. De Kooning. Frankenthaler. Klein. Each one worth millions. Some worth tens of millions. At the back of the cabinet was a leather-bound ledger. She opened it to the last page. At the top, in handwritten script, it said Total Collection Value updated May 2013. Below that, a number, $295,420,000. $295 million. Sarah sat down hard on the stone floor, the ledger falling from her hands. She couldn't breathe. Couldn't think. Couldn't process the impossibility of what she'd just found. She was living in a house with almost $300 million in art hidden in a secret room beneath the library. And no one knew it was here. Sarah sat on the cold stone floor for what felt like hours but was probably only minutes. Her mind raced, trying to understand what she'd stumbled into. Why would Robin Williams hide this collection? Why wouldn't his family know about it? The estate had gone through probate. Lawyers, accountants, appraisers had gone through everything. How had they missed an entire museum's worth of art? Unless he'd meant for them to miss it. She picked up the ledger again and flipped through it more carefully. The entries went back decades. The first purchase was dated 1979. A small Warhol print bought for $3,200. From there, the collection grew steadily. A few pieces a year at first, then more as Williams' career took off and his wealth increased. But something changed around 2008. The entries became more frequent, more expensive. He was buying multiple pieces every month. Major works by significant artists. The kind of purchases that should have attracted attention in the art world. Sarah found a section of the ledger that wasn't about purchases but about authentication and provenance. Williams had hired experts to verify every piece, to trace its history, to ensure it was legitimate. He'd been obsessive about it. She found letters tucked into the ledger. Correspondence with galleries, auction houses, private collectors. And in one letter, dated March 2013, she found something that made everything click into place. It was from Williams to his attorney, a man named Robert Caldwell. "Robert," it began. "I need your help with a delicate matter. The collection I've been building over the past 30 years has become both a joy and a burden. I love these works deeply. They've brought me peace in times when peace felt impossible. But I'm also aware that they represent a fortune, and fortunes attract attention I don't want. I've decided to secure the collection in a way that protects it from probate, from publicity, from the inevitable circus that will follow my death. I've built a climate-controlled storage room beneath the library at the hillside property. Only I know it exists. I want to keep it that way until the right time. I'm not hiding assets from taxes or creditors. I'll pay what I owe. But I want this collection to be discovered on its own timeline, by someone who'll appreciate it for more than its monetary value. Someone who needs it, perhaps. Someone who'll understand that beauty has purpose beyond price. When I'm gone, if the right person finds this place, they'll know what to do with it. And if no one finds it, well, perhaps that's fate's way of saying the world wasn't ready. Please don't tell anyone about this. Not my family. Not my business managers. This is my secret to keep. My gift to leave for whoever comes after me." It was signed Robin in a shaky hand. Sarah read the letter 3 times. He'd hidden it on purpose. He'd created this secret room and filled it with treasures knowing that someday, maybe years after his death, someone would find it. And that someone was her. She thought about the caretaker agreement she'd signed. About how Patricia had said no one else wanted the property. How everyone thought it was cursed, haunted, bad luck. What if that was an accident? What if the estate management company had been instructed to find someone specific, someone desperate, someone who'd actually live in the house instead of just maintaining it? What if she'd been chosen? The thought was too big to hold. Sarah stood up, her legs unsteady, and walked back through the tunnel. She emerged into the library, closed the hidden bookshelf door, and stood there breathing hard. Her phone rang. She nearly dropped it. It was Patricia. "Sarah, hi. Just checking in. How are you settling in?" "Fine." "Good. Everything's fine." "Great. I wanted to let you know that the property taxes for the year have been paid, so you don't need to worry about that. And the utility companies have your name on file now. Is there anything you need? Any problems with the house?" Sarah looked at the bookshelf hiding $295 million in art. "No. No problems." "Good. Oh, one more thing. There was a man who called the office asking about the property. Said he was a friend of Robin's, wanted to tour the house for sentimental reasons. I told him the property has a live-in caretaker now and tours aren't available. Just wanted to give you a heads up in case he tries to contact you directly." Sarah's stomach clenched. "What was his name?" "Derek Lawson. Said he used to work with Robin on projects, some kind of art consultant or dealer. He seemed nice enough, but I thought you should know. Thanks for telling me." After she hung up, Sarah stood in the library for a long time, thinking. Someone was already looking for the house. Someone who'd worked with Robin on art projects. Someone who probably knew about the collection. She needed to tell someone what she'd found. She needed legal advice. But who could she trust? If she called Patricia, would the estate management company claim the collection? If she called the police, would they confiscate everything while they sorted out ownership? And what about William's family? His children? Surely they had a right to know about this. But the letter had been clear. He didn't want them to know. At least not right away. Sarah thought about her own children sleeping upstairs. About the stability this house had given them. About the school they were finally thriving in. About Marcus who'd stopped wetting the bed. About Lily who was making friends. About Zoe who'd started talking again. If she reported the collection now, would they be able to stay? Or would the property become a crime scene, an investigation, a media circus? She couldn't risk it. Not yet. She decided to wait. To learn more. To figure out what Robin Williams had really wanted before she made any irreversible decisions. Over the next week, Sarah spent every spare moment in the hidden room. She photographed every piece. She went through every folder in the filing cabinet, reading the documentation, learning the provenance of each work. She discovered that Williams hadn't just been collecting randomly. He'd been focused. Most of the pieces were by American artists. Many dealt with themes of identity, mental health, the human condition. He'd built a collection that told a story about struggle, beauty, and the search for meaning. She found more letters. Some from Williams to artists he'd met, expressing his admiration for their work. Some from dealers trying to sell him pieces. And one letter that changed everything, dated June 2014, just 2 months before his death. It was from Williams to someone named Sarah. Sarah's blood ran cold. She read the letter slowly. "Dear Sarah, whoever you are. If you're reading this, it means you found my secret. I knew someone would, eventually. I built this place to be discovered, though I couldn't predict when or by whom. I chose the name Sarah because it means princess in Hebrew. Not because I think you're royalty, but because I hope you're someone who needs rescuing. Someone who's been through hell and came out the other side. Someone who'll understand that these paintings aren't just investments or status symbols. They're prayers, really. Visual prayers for a better world. I was sick when I wrote this. Not just depressed, which I've been my whole life, but actually sick. Lewy body dementia, the doctors think, though they're not certain. I'm losing my mind piece by piece. Forgetting things. Seeing things. And I'm scared, Sarah. So scared of what's coming. But I'm not scared of death. I'm scared of leaving this collection in the wrong hands. Scared it'll be sold off piece by piece to the highest bidder. Scattered across private collections where no one can see it. Where it can't do any good. So I'm leaving it to you. To whoever you are. To the person brave enough or desperate enough to take on this house that everyone else is afraid of. You're going to find almost $300 million in art down here. And what you do with it will define not just your life, but the legacy of everything I tried to build. You could sell it. God knows you probably need the money if you're living in my old house as a caretaker. You could keep it. Hide it like I did. Enjoy it privately. Or you could share it. Give it to the world. Let people see what I loved. Let it inspire and heal and challenge the way it inspired and healed and challenged me. I can't tell you what to do. I can only tell you what I hope. I hope you'll be brave. I hope you'll be generous. I hope you'll understand that beauty belongs to everyone, even when it's owned by someone. There's more information in the filing cabinet. Legal documents. My attorney, Robert Caldwell, knew about this place. He helped me set it up. He passed away in 2015, but he left instructions with his firm. They've been told that if anyone comes forward with knowledge of this collection, they're to assist without question. The number for his firm is in the cabinet. When you're ready, call them. They'll help you navigate the legal complexities. They'll protect you from people who'll try to take this away from you. Because people will try, Sarah. The moment this goes public, everyone will have an opinion about what should happen to it. Stay strong. Trust yourself. And remember that you found this for a reason. Not by accident. By design. With hope and faith in strangers, Robin. Sarah read the letter 4 times, tears streaming down her face. He'd known. Somehow, he'd known that someone like her would end up here. Someone desperate enough to take a house no one else wanted. Someone who'd find the hidden room and face an impossible choice. She looked around at the paintings, at the sculptures, at the $295 million legacy of a man she'd never met but somehow felt like she knew. And she understood what she had to do. She had to protect it. Learn about it. Understand it. And then, when the time was right, she had to share it. Not because she wanted to be famous or generous or noble. But because Robin Williams had trusted her with something precious. And she wasn't going to let him down. The next morning, Sarah called the law firm. A receptionist answered cheerfully. Caldwell and Associates, how may I direct your call? I need to speak with someone about Robert Caldwell's estate. About Robin Williams. There was a pause. One moment, please. Hold music. Mozart. Sarah's heart pounded. A man's voice came on the line. This is James Caldwell, Robert's son. Who am I speaking with? My name is Sarah Chen. I'm living in Robin Williams' house on Hillside Road. I found something. Something your father helped Robin hide. Another pause. Are you in the house right now? Yes. Is anyone else there? Just my children. Don't tell anyone else what you found. Don't photograph it. Don't touch anything. I'm coming to you. I'll be there in 2 hours. Don't open the door for anyone else. He hung up before she could respond. Sarah spent the next 2 hours in a state of barely controlled panic. She checked on the kids, who were playing in the game room upstairs. She made them lunch. She tried to act normal. But her mind kept spinning, imagining worst-case scenarios. What if James Caldwell was corrupt? What if he'd been waiting for someone to find the collection so he could steal it? What if this was a trap? But she'd already made the call. There was no going back now. At exactly 2 hours, a black Mercedes pulled into the driveway. A man got out, mid-50s, gray suit, expensive shoes. He looked like every lawyer she'd ever seen on TV. Sarah met him at the door. Sarah Chen? Yes. James Caldwell. Thank you for calling. May I come in? She led him to the library. He looked around slowly, taking in the books, the desk, the space. My father helped Robin design this room. This was where Robin felt safest. Most himself. He turned to her. Show me. Sarah pressed the hidden button. The bookshelf swung open. James smiled. There it is. They went down together. James walked through the corridor and into the hidden room with the casual comfort of someone who'd been there before. I was here once. When I was younger. My father brought me to see what he and Robin had built. I was sworn to secrecy. He looked at the paintings, the sculptures, the collection Robin had spent 3 decades assembling. It's exactly as I remember. Maybe a little dustier. He turned to Sarah. You did the right thing calling me. This collection is legally complex. Robin structured it carefully to avoid probate, but he also wanted to make sure it ended up with someone who'd care about it properly. His letter said I could decide what to do with it. That's correct. Robin set up a trust before his death. The trust's sole asset is this collection. And the trust's sole beneficiary is the person who discovers the art collection at Hillside Road. That's you, Sarah. Sarah's knees went weak. You're saying this belongs to me? Legally, yes. The trust transfers to you the moment you claim it. But there are complexities. Taxes. Authentication. Insurance. And most importantly, intention. What do you mean? James walked to the Rothko painting, the massive canvas of blues and purples. Robin didn't hide this because he wanted to evade taxes or cheat his family. He paid all his taxes. His estate was settled fairly. This collection was always separate, always meant to be found later, by someone outside his circle. He looked at her. He wanted to test something. He wanted to see if someone in need, someone who'd been through hardship, would choose generosity over greed. Would choose to share this beauty with the world instead of hoarding it or selling it for personal gain. That's not fair, Sarah said. I have 3 kids. We were homeless. We're still 1 bad month away from being homeless again. You're saying I have to choose between being generous and taking care of my family? No. I'm saying Robin left you a choice. He hoped you'd be generous, but he also knew you'd need security. So he structured the trust to give you both. James pulled out a folder from his briefcase. If you choose to donate the collection to a museum or public institution, the trust will provide you with $10 million as a finder's fee. That's after taxes, after legal fees. Clear money you can use to build a life for your family. Sarah's mouth went dry. $10 million? Yes. Alternatively, you could keep the collection. Sell pieces privately over time. Potentially make much more than $10 million. But you'd face enormous tax burdens, security costs, insurance costs. And you'd spend your life dealing with collectors, dealers, and critics. The art world can be brutal, especially to outsiders. What if I keep some and donate some? That's allowed. The trust has flexibility. But Robin's hope, his expressed wish in documents filed with our firm, was that the collection stay together. That it be accessible to the public. That it inspire people the way it inspired him. Sarah looked around the room. At the paintings she'd spent the last week learning about. At the Basquiat skull that seemed to look back at her. At the Diebenkorn woman forever turned away. At the Rothko that felt like falling into water. How long do I have to decide? Take your time. A week. A month. Whatever you need. But eventually, we'll need to file paperwork with the IRS. And once we do, this becomes public. Media attention. Art world attention. All of it. What happens to the house? The house and the collection are separate. The caretaker agreement stands regardless of what you decide about the art. You have this place for at least a year, possibly longer. But Sarah, I need you to understand something. He looked at her seriously. The moment this goes public, your life changes forever. People will call you lucky. They'll call you greedy or generous depending on what you choose. They'll judge everything you do. The privacy you have now, the quiet life you're building for your kids, it ends. Sarah thought about Lily, Marcus, and Zoe upstairs. About the school they loved. About the routine they'd finally established. About mornings without fear and nights without cold. I need to think about it. Of course. Call me when you're ready. After James left, Sarah went back down to the hidden room. She sat in the chair by the Rothko and stared at the painting until the colors seemed to pulse with their own light. Robin Williams had sat here too, probably in this exact spot. Had stared at this painting when the world felt too heavy. When the expectations were crushing. When the sadness threatened to swallow him whole. He'd looked at this painting and found peace. Or at least the closest thing to peace he could reach. And now he'd given Sarah the power to decide if anyone else would ever get that chance. Sarah spent the next 3 weeks in a state of suspended animation. She went through the motions of daily life. Made breakfast. Drove kids to school. Cleaned the house. But her mind was always down in that hidden room, circling the same questions over and over. $10 million would change everything. Her kids could go to college without debt. They could have stable housing forever. She could build a life where money wasn't a constant source of fear and shame. But giving away $295 million in art felt impossible. Even with the $10 million finder's fee, she'd be walking away from hundreds of millions. Her children's children could live off that wealth. She could build a dynasty. Except she didn't want a dynasty. She wanted her kids to be happy and safe and normal. And something told her that the kind of wealth that came from keeping Robin Williams' secret collection would make normal impossible. She researched the artists whose work filled the hidden room. Read their biographies. Learned about their struggles. Discovered that many of them had dealt with the same demons Robin Williams had faced. Depression. Addiction. The crushing weight of genius. They'd made art to survive. To process pain into beauty. To leave something behind that mattered. And Robin had collected their work not as investment, but as connection. As proof that he wasn't alone in his suffering. That others had felt this way and made something beautiful anyway. Sarah understood that now. Understood why he'd hidden it. Why he'd wanted it found by someone who needed rescuing. Because people who've been rescued understand the value of beauty differently than people who've always been safe. She'd been hungry. Had slept in cars with her children. Had felt the terror of having nowhere to go and no one to help. She knew what desperation felt like. And she knew that in those moments, beauty could be the thing that kept you going. A painting. A song. A book. Proof that the world contained more than suffering. She made her decision on a Tuesday morning in April. The kids were at school. The house was quiet. She went down to the hidden room one last time and stood in front of the Rothko. "Okay, Robin," she said out loud. "I'll do what you wanted. I'll be brave." She called James Caldwell. "I want to donate the collection. All of it. To a museum. But I have conditions." "What kind of conditions?" "The collection has to stay together. It has to be called the Robin Williams Collection. And 1 day a week, it has to be free to the public. No admission fee. So kids like mine can see it even if they can't afford it." There was silence on the other end. Then James spoke, his voice thick. He would have loved that. "And one more thing. I want part of the finder's fee to go to mental health organizations. Suicide prevention. Depression research." Robin struggled with that. The money should help people who struggle the same way. "How much?" "Half. $5 million to charity. $5 million for my family." "You're sure?" "I'm sure." "Then let's make it happen." The next 3 months were a blur of legal documents, authentication processes, tax filings, and negotiations with museums. The De Young Museum in San Francisco offered to house the collection permanently, agreeing to all of Sarah's terms. They'd build a dedicated wing. The Robin Williams collection would be a cornerstone of their American art holdings. The media found out, of course. The story was too good to keep quiet. Homeless mother discovers $295 million art collection. Robin Williams' secret gift. The hidden room that changed everything. Reporters camped outside the house. Sarah had to hire security. Had to keep the kids home from school for a week until the frenzy died down. It was everything James had warned her about and worse. But there were good parts too. Letters from people who'd been inspired by Robin's work. From people struggling with depression who felt seen by the story. From families who'd experienced homelessness and wanted to say thank you for not forgetting where she came from. The $5 million donation to mental health charities created a foundation in Robin's name. The Robin Williams Project. It would fund research, prevention programs, and support groups for people in crisis. And the $5 million for Sarah's family went into a trust managed by financial advisors James recommended. It would generate income, cover expenses, and ensure her kids had security without drowning them in wealth they hadn't earned. Sarah insisted on staying in the house through the one-year caretaker period. She felt like she owed it to Robin to care for the place he'd loved until someone else could take over. The estate management company eventually found a buyer, a family who wanted to restore the property and live in it, honoring its history. On moving day, Sarah walked through the empty rooms one last time. The furniture was gone. The art was gone. The hidden room had been sealed up, its secret shared with the world. But the bones of the house remained. The library where Robin had spent so many hours. The desk where he'd written. The view he'd loved. "Thank you," she whispered. "For everything." She drove her kids to their new house, a modest 4-bedroom in a good neighborhood with good schools. Nothing fancy. Nothing that would make them feel different from other kids. Just solid and safe in theirs. They'd bought it outright with part of the trust money. No mortgage. No landlord. No threat of eviction. Their names on the deed. Marcus ran through the house claiming his room. Lily found a reading nook she immediately filled with books. Zoe, now 3 and fully verbal, declared the backyard perfect for a playset. Sarah stood in the kitchen, unpacking boxes, and felt something she'd never felt before. Not hope. Not relief. But peace. The bone-deep knowledge that her children were safe. That they'd be okay. That the cycle of poverty and instability had been broken. 6 months later, the De Young Museum held the official opening of the Robin Williams collection. Sarah attended with her children, all of them dressed in their best. The wing was beautiful. Light-filled. Respectful. The paintings hung with space to breathe, labels explaining not just the artist but Robin's connection to each piece. There was a wall of text explaining the collection's history. How Robin had built it over 30 years. How he'd hidden it with the hope that someone who needed rescuing would find it. How Sarah Chen, a homeless mother of 3, had discovered it and chosen to share it with the world. There was a photo of Sarah and her kids. Another photo of Robin. And a quote from his letter to the unknown Sarah who would find his gift. Beauty belongs to everyone, even when it's owned by someone. The museum director gave a speech about the collection's significance. About Robin's vision. About Sarah's generosity. There was applause. Flash photography. Questions from reporters that Sarah declined to answer beyond a brief statement. Then it was time to cut the ribbon. Sarah stood with scissors in her hand, her children beside her, looking at a room full of art worth hundreds of millions of dollars that could have been hers but now belonged to everyone. She thought about the woman she'd been a year ago. Desperate. Broken. Convinced she'd failed her children in every way that mattered. She thought about Robin Williams. Brilliant and sad. Successful and struggling. A man who made millions laugh but couldn't escape his own darkness. And she thought about the house. The hidden room. The impossible gift that had changed everything. She cut the ribbon. The crowd applauded. And in that moment, Sarah understood what Robin had known all along. That beauty does heal. That generosity does matter. That second chances are real. And that sometimes the most broken people leave behind the most beautiful gifts. Not because they want to be remembered, but because they want to give others the hope they couldn't quite find themselves. The Robin Williams collection opened to the public on a Monday. Free admission day, as Sarah had insisted. The line wrapped around the block. Families. Students. Art lovers. People who'd never been to a museum before but had heard the story and wanted to see what all the fuss was about. Sarah stood in the back of the gallery watching people experience the paintings. A young woman cried in front of the Rothko. A group of teenagers debated the meaning of the Basquiat. A father explained the Diebenkorn to his daughter, both of them studying the way the artist had captured light. Marcus tugged her sleeve. "Mom, that could have been ours, right? All of it?" "Yes, baby. Do you wish it was?" Sarah looked around the gallery. At all the people who would never have seen this art if she'd kept it hidden. At the kids who looked like her kids, who came from neighborhoods like theirs, who were seeing original Warhols and Rothkos for the first time because admission was free. "No," she said. "I don't wish it was ours. I'm glad it's theirs." Lily squeezed her other hand. "You did good, Mama. We did good, baby. All of us." That night, after the kids were asleep in their safe, warm beds in their safe, warm house, Sarah sat in her own room and thought about the past year. About everything that had changed. Everything that had been lost and found and chosen. She pulled out the letter Robin had written. The one addressed to Sarah, whoever you are. She read it one more time, lingering on the final paragraph. "Stay strong. Trust yourself. And remember that you found this for a reason. Not by accident. By design." She folded the letter carefully and put it in a frame on her dresser where she could see it every morning. A reminder that beauty persists. That hope endures. That even in the darkest moments, there are gifts waiting to be found. And that sometimes, the greatest treasure isn't what you keep. It's what you choose to give away. The years between the collection's donation and that 10th anniversary ceremony hadn't been as smooth as Sarah's speech suggested. There had been complications. Challenges she'd never anticipated. Tests of her decision that made her question everything. It started 3 months after the collection went public. A man showed up at her new house claiming to be Robin Williams' nephew. He had lawyers. Documents. A claim that the trust had been improperly structured and that the collection rightfully belonged to the Williams family estate. The lawsuit dragged on for 18 months. Sarah had to give depositions. Had to sit in conference rooms with attorneys who made her feel stupid and small. Had to listen to accusations that she'd manipulated the situation, that she'd known about the collection before accepting the caretaker position, that the whole thing was an elaborate con. The legal fees ate through a significant portion of her finder's fee. James Caldwell and his firm defended her vigorously, but there were moments when Sarah wondered if she should have just kept everything hidden. If she should have pretended she'd never found that secret door. Marcus started having panic attacks during the lawsuit. The stress of seeing his mother attacked in the media, of having their lives dissected by strangers, of watching her cry over legal bills, brought back the trauma of their homeless months. He'd wake up screaming, convinced they were going to lose everything and end up back in the shelter. Lily became withdrawn. She stopped bringing friends home, embarrassed by the attention, by the news vans that occasionally showed up, by classmates who asked invasive questions about the art collection and the money and whether her mom was really as generous as the news said or just doing it for publicity. Zoe was too young to understand most of it, but she absorbed the tension. She started clinging to Sarah again, regressing to behaviors she'd outgrown. The thumb-sucking returned. The nightmares. The fear of abandonment. Sarah felt like she was failing them all over again. She'd made this grand gesture, this supposedly noble choice, and it was destroying her family anyway. The lawsuit was finally dismissed. The judge ruled that the trust had been properly established, that Robin Williams had been of sound mind when he created it, and that Sarah had fulfilled all requirements to claim the collection as its rightful beneficiary. The nephew's claim had no legal standing. But the damage lingered. Sarah's name had been dragged through the mud. Articles questioned her motives. Art World insiders suggested she donated the collection only because she lacked the sophistication to manage it properly. Critics said she should have kept it, that Robin would have wanted his collection to remain private, that she'd betrayed his trust by making it public. The second wave of criticism came from an unexpected direction. Homeless advocates accused her of not doing enough. They pointed out that $5 million to charity was only a fraction of what the collection was worth. They said she should have donated everything, kept nothing for herself, used all of it to help people still struggling. Sarah read an article calling her the woman who profited from another man's tragedy and cried for 3 hours. She'd tried to do the right thing. Had walked away from hundreds of millions. Had prioritized public access over personal gain. And still, it wasn't enough. Still, people found reasons to tear her down. She started seeing a therapist. Dr. Morrison was in her 60s with kind eyes and zero tolerance for self-pity. She listened to Sarah's spiral of doubt and guilt, then delivered a verdict that changed everything. You made a choice based on your values and your circumstances. You chose generosity within reason. You took care of your family while honoring someone else's legacy. That's not just okay, Sarah. That's remarkably balanced. The people criticizing you would have kept everything or given away everything, and either choice would have been wrong for you. But what if I made the wrong choice? Sarah asked. What if I should have kept it? My kids are suffering because of the attention. Your kids are suffering because people are cruel, not because you made a wrong choice. And they're also learning something invaluable. They're learning that doing good is often thankless. That generosity doesn't protect you from criticism. That you can make the right choice and still suffer for it. Those are hard lessons, but they're real. And they'll make your children stronger. Dr. Morrison leaned forward. Robin Williams struggled with depression his entire life. He knew what it meant to be criticized no matter what you did. To be torn apart by people who didn't know you. To give everything and have it never be enough. He chose you for this precisely because he knew it would be hard. He knew whoever found the collection would be tested. And he trusted that you'd survive the test. Sarah wasn't sure she believed that. But she held on to it anyway. The mental health foundation Sarah had established with part of her finder's fee became her refuge. She threw herself into the work. The Robin Williams Project grew quickly, establishing crisis hotlines, funding research into depression and suicide prevention, creating support groups for people struggling with the same darkness Robin had faced. Sarah met people whose lives had been saved by the foundation's work. A teenager who'd called the hotline instead of swallowing pills. A veteran who'd found community in a support group. A mother who'd gotten treatment for postpartum depression before it destroyed her family. These people didn't care about the controversy. Didn't care whether Sarah had made the right choice. They were alive because Robin Williams' money was funding programs that helped them stay alive. That mattered more than any critic's opinion. One day, Sarah received a letter from a woman named Jennifer. She was 43 years old, living in Portland, and she'd been diagnosed with Lewy body dementia, the same disease that had tormented Robin in his final months. I'm terrified, Jennifer wrote. The doctors say I have maybe 5 years before I won't recognize my own children. 5 years before I become someone else. Someone I won't even know. I've thought about ending it early. Saving my family from watching me disappear. But then I heard about the Robin Williams Project. About the research you're funding into Lewy body dementia. About the support groups for families dealing with it. And I thought, maybe I don't have to do this alone. Maybe there's hope. Jennifer had enrolled in one of the foundation's research studies. She'd joined a support group. She'd connected with other people facing the same diagnosis. And she'd decided to live. To fight. To squeeze every moment of clarity out of the time she had left. "You saved my life," the letter concluded. Not directly. But by choosing to honor Robin's struggle instead of hiding it. By using his money to help people like me. "I'll never meet you. But I'm grateful to you. And I'm grateful to Robin for trusting you with his secret." Sarah kept that letter in her desk drawer. On the days when the criticism felt crushing, when she questioned everything, she'd read it again. Jennifer was alive. That was real. The rest was just noise. Marcus slowly recovered from his panic attacks with the help of therapy and time. He started talking about Robin Williams in his architecture classes, about how the comedian had used physical space as refuge, how the house's design reflected both his need for connection and his need for solitude. "I want to design buildings that help people feel safe," Marcus told Sarah one night. "Buildings that protect people the way that house protected us." Robin understood that architecture isn't just about aesthetics. It's about creating spaces where people can be their full selves without fear. He started a project designing a shelter for homeless families. Not the institutional kind Sarah remembered from their desperate months, but something different. Small pods that gave each family privacy. Common areas that fostered community. Design elements that preserved dignity. "I'm calling it the Hillside Project," Marcus said, showing her the sketches. "After the house. After what that place meant to us." Sarah looked at her son's drawings and saw Robin Williams' influence rippling forward. The collection had funded mental health programs. But the house, the experience, had shaped her children's understanding of what mattered. That was a legacy too. Lily found her own way to process the chaos. She started a blog called After the Headlines, where she wrote about what happens to people after their 15 minutes of fame ends. She interviewed lottery winners, viral video stars, ordinary people thrust into extraordinary circumstances. "Everyone wants to know what it's like during the moment," she told Sarah. "When you're discovered or rescued or famous. But nobody talks about what happens after. When the cameras leave and you're stuck with the consequences of choices you made in crisis." Her blog developed a following. Other people who'd experienced sudden fame or fortune found community there. They shared strategies for handling criticism, for protecting privacy, for maintaining normalcy when the world decided you were a story instead of a person. Lily wrote an essay about her mother's choice that went viral. "My mother gave away $295 million and it ruined our lives, and that's okay," detailed the harassment, the lawsuit, the mental health struggles, all of it. But the conclusion shifted the narrative. Would I trade the money for privacy? Yes. Absolutely. In a heartbeat. Would I trade my mother's integrity for comfort? Never. Because she taught me that doing the right thing doesn't guarantee a reward. Sometimes it guarantees suffering. But you do it anyway. That's what integrity means. The essay was shared hundreds of thousands of times. Sarah cried reading it. Not because of the praise, though that helped. But because her daughter understood. Because despite the pain, despite the criticism, Lily grasped why the choice had mattered. Zoe's relationship with the story was the most complex. She'd been so young when they found the collection that she had few memories of the homeless months. She'd grown up in stability. Had never known real hunger or cold or fear of losing her mother. Sometimes Sarah worried that made Zoe take things for granted. That she didn't understand how close they'd come to disaster. That the security felt so natural to her that she couldn't appreciate it. But then Zoe started painting. Her early work was abstract, full of color and motion. But as she got older, around 15 or 16, her style shifted. She started painting portraits of invisible people. The homeless man everyone walked past. The woman sleeping in her car. The kid wearing the same clothes for a week straight. She painted them with dignity. With detail. With the kind of attention usually reserved for celebrities or saints. She made the invisible visible. Her first gallery show was called Before Hillside. It featured 30 portraits of homeless individuals she'd met through Sarah's social work. Each painting was accompanied by a placard with the person's story. Their name. Their circumstances. What had led them to the streets. The show raised $200,000. Zoe donated all of it to homeless services organizations. She was 17 years old. Why? Sarah asked. You could have kept that money. Saved it for college. Because you taught me, Zoe said simply. You taught me that having more than you need means you have a responsibility to share. I don't need $200,000. But those organizations do. So it's not really a choice. It's just what you do. Sarah realized then that her children had inherited something more valuable than Robin Williams' art collection. They'd inherited a framework for living. A set of values that prioritized meaning over money, integrity over comfort, contribution over accumulation. That was Robin's real gift. Not the paintings. The test. The choice he'd forced upon a desperate woman that had shaped how her children understood the world. 5 years after the donation, Sarah received an unexpected visitor. A woman in her 70s, elegant and composed, showed up at her door with a box of old photographs. My name is Sarah Chen, she said. No relation, I assume. But I was Robin's friend for over 30 years. We met doing theater in San Francisco in the 80s. I was his confidant during his darkest times. She came inside. Sarah made tea. They sat in the living room while Margaret explained why she'd come. Robin told me about the collection. Not the details, but the concept. He said he was building something that would outlast his sadness. That would prove beauty could survive even when the person who loved it couldn't. Margaret pulled out photographs. Robin in his 20s, already famous but not yet weighted down. Robin in his 40s, the cracks starting to show. Robin in his 60s, exhausted but still trying. He struggled so much, Margaret said quietly. Fought demons most people can't imagine. And the worst part was that everyone expected him to be happy. He made millions laugh, so how could he be depressed? His success made his suffering somehow invalid. She looked at Sarah directly. I've watched what happened after you found the collection. The criticism. The accusations. The way people tore you apart for not being perfectly generous or perfectly grateful. And I wanted you to know that Robin would have understood. Would have expected it, even. What do you mean? He knew that generosity is punished as often as it's rewarded. That people resent those who make them feel guilty about their own selfishness. That choosing public good over private gain marks you as either a saint or a sucker, and both categories attract contempt. Margaret reached across and took Sarah's hand. You did exactly what he hoped someone would do. You chose him perfectly, humanly, courageously. You took care of your family while honoring his legacy. That's not a failure. That's wisdom. She left the photographs. Images of Robin laughing, thinking, creating. Images of a man who'd been more than his sadness but was defined by it anyway. Sarah kept them with Jennifer's letter. Reminders that the story was bigger than her comfort. That some choices echo beyond the people who make them. The museum visits became a family tradition. Once a month, Sarah and the kids would go to the DeYoung on free admission day and walk through the Robin Williams collection. They'd see different people each time. Different reactions. Different connections. Sarah watched a young man stand in front of the Basquiat skull for 45 minutes, tears streaming down his face. She watched an elderly couple hold hands in front of the Rothko, swaying slightly as if the painting were music. She watched a group of teenagers take selfies with the Warhol, then pause and actually look at it, something shifting in their expressions. Each visit reminded her why the choice had mattered. These people, strangers, were experiencing art they'd never have seen otherwise. Were feeling things Robin Williams had felt. Were connecting across decades and death to something beautiful and true. On Marcus's 21st birthday, he asked to spend the day at the museum. They went early, before the crowds. Marcus walked through the collection slowly, studying each piece with the critical eye he'd developed in architecture school. He stopped in front of the Diebenkorn, the woman forever turned away. "I used to think she was hiding," he said. "Running from something. But I don't think that's it anymore." "What do you think now?" "I think she's choosing privacy. Choosing to keep some part of herself separate from the viewer. And that's okay. That's her right." He turned to Sarah. "You've been so public with our story. But you've also protected parts of it. Parts that are just ours. I appreciate that. I know the pressure was to share everything, to be completely transparent. But some things should stay private." Sarah hadn't realized he'd noticed. Hadn't known he understood the careful line she'd walked between honoring Robin's wish for the collection to go public and protecting her family's right to privacy. "I learned that from you," she said. "Watching you close your bedroom door during the worst of it. Seeing you refuse to talk to reporters. You taught me that you could participate in something public without giving away your whole self." "I learned it from the woman in the painting," Marcus said. "And from Robin. He was one of the most public figures in the world. But he still had secrets. Still had places no one could reach. That's not dishonest. That's survival." On Lily's 19th birthday, she asked for something unusual. She wanted to interview Sarah for her blog. Not about the big decisions or the controversy. About the small moments. The details that never made it into the news. "Tell me about the first time you saw the collection," Lily said, recorder running. "Not the moment you opened the door. The moment after. When the shock wore off and you actually saw it." Sarah closed her eyes, remembering. "I saw my reflection in the glass covering one of the paintings. I was filthy. Wearing clothes I'd had for months. Hair unwashed. And behind my reflection was this painting worth millions. This beautiful thing. And I thought, I don't belong here. This isn't for people like me. But you stayed. I stayed because I realized that's exactly why Robin hid it the way he did. He wanted it found by someone who felt they didn't belong. Someone who understood what it meant to be shut out of beautiful spaces. Someone who'd fight to make sure other people like them could get in." Lily stopped the recording. "That's the part no one talks about. How much courage it took to believe you deserved to make that choice. That your judgment mattered even though you weren't rich or educated or connected. I still wonder sometimes if I deserved it. But you made the choice anyway. That's what matters." The interview was published on the 7th anniversary of the discovery. It went viral again. But this time the response was different. More thoughtful. More nuanced. People seemed to finally understand that Sarah hadn't been lucky. She'd been tested. And she'd passed, but at enormous cost. On Zoe's 18th birthday, she didn't ask for anything. She gave Sarah something instead. A painting. Large format. Oil on canvas. It showed 4 figures standing in a room full of art. A woman and 3 children. Their faces were turned toward the light streaming through a window. Behind them, barely visible in the shadows, was a 5th figure. A man. Watching them. Smiling. "Is that Robin?" Sarah whispered. "It's how I imagine him," Zoe said. Watching what happened to his gift. Seeing that it ended up with people who needed it. People who'd understand. Sarah hung the painting in her office. Visitors often asked about it. Assumed it was from the Williams collection. Were surprised to learn it had been created by Sarah's daughter, inspired by the story but separate from it. That felt right. The collection had ended. Its fate was decided. But the story continued. New chapters. New art. New ways of understanding what had happened and what it meant. The 10th anniversary ceremony was planned carefully. The museum wanted to celebrate the collection's impact. The millions of visitors. The scholarship it had enabled. The way it had transformed the museum's standing in the art world. But Sarah insisted on something else. She wanted to honor the people who'd been saved by the Robin Williams Project. The people whose lives had changed because of the mental health funding. So the ceremony included testimonials. Jennifer spoke about living with Lewy body dementia, about the support groups and research that had given her hope. A veteran talked about calling the crisis hotline at 3 a.m., about the volunteer who'd stayed on the phone with him until dawn, about being alive to see his daughter graduate college. A teenager named Maya spoke about struggling with depression, about feeling like she was broken in ways no one could fix, about finding a support group through the foundation where she met other people who understood. "I'm here because Robin Williams was honest about his pain," Maya said. "And because Sarah Chen used his honesty to help people like me. I'll never meet Robin. But his struggle saved my life." The ceremony wasn't about celebrating Sarah. It was about honoring what Robin's choice, and then Sarah's choice, had made possible. The ripple effects. The lives changed. The darkness that had been transformed into light. When Sarah stood at the podium for her speech, she looked out at the crowd and saw Margaret Chin in the third row. She saw Jennifer with her family. She saw her children, all adults now, all finding their own ways to contribute. She saw Dr. Morrison, her therapist, who'd helped her survive the worst of the criticism. And she imagined Robin Williams in the back, the way Zoe had painted him. Watching. Smiling. Finally at peace. Her prepared speech went out the window. She spoke from the heart instead. "Robin Williams left a message for me," she began. "For whoever found his collection. He said that beauty belongs to everyone, even when it's owned by someone. I've thought about that line every day for 10 years. Tried to understand what he meant. I think he meant that ownership is temporary. That all the beautiful things in the world will outlast the people who possess them. That our job isn't to hoard beauty but to protect it until we pass it on. I owned that collection for about 3 months. Legally, it was mine. But really, I was just a caretaker. Just like Robin was. Just like whoever comes after me will be. We don't own beauty. We're trusted with it temporarily. And what we do with that trust defines us." She paused, finding her courage. "I've been criticized for keeping $5 million. For not giving away everything. For choosing my family's security over complete self-sacrifice. And I understand that criticism. I've leveled it at myself more times than anyone else has. But here's what I've learned. Martyrdom isn't generosity. Destroying yourself to help others doesn't honor anyone's legacy. Robin didn't hide that collection hoping someone would find it and go bankrupt being noble. He hid it hoping someone would find balance. Would be generous and wise. Would help others without erasing themselves. I took care of my children. I funded mental health programs. I made beautiful art accessible. And I've spent 10 years defending those choices to people who think I should have done more or less or different. And you know what? I'm done defending. I made the best choice I could with the information I had and the circumstances I faced. I honored Robin's trust. I helped people. I raised good humans. That's enough. It has to be enough." The room was silent. Then someone started clapping. Then another. Then everyone. Standing ovation. Not for martyrdom or perfect generosity. For honest, flawed, human courage. Sarah stepped away from the podium and felt a weight lift that she'd been carrying for a decade. The weight of others' expectations. The weight of trying to justify her choice endlessly. The weight of wondering if she'd been good enough. She'd been good enough. She'd done what she could. That was all anyone could ask. After the ceremony, Sarah walked through the Robin Williams collection one last time. She stopped in front of the Rothko, the painting she'd sat with so many times in the hidden room. The blues and purples that had seemed to pulse with their own light. She thought about the woman she'd been when she first saw this painting. Homeless. Desperate. Terrified she'd lose her children. That woman would have sold the collection in a heartbeat. Would have taken every penny to build a fortress around her family. But somewhere between finding the art and making the choice, that woman had changed. Had remembered that she wasn't just a mother fighting for survival. She was a person with values. With integrity. With a responsibility to something larger than her own family's needs. Robin Williams had known that about her before she knew it herself. Had trusted that desperation wouldn't destroy her decency. That poverty hadn't erased her capacity for generosity. He'd been right. And that faith, that trust in a stranger, had changed everything. Sarah left the museum and walked to her car where her children waited. They were arguing about where to go for dinner. Marcus wanted Thai food. Lily wanted Italian. Zoe didn't care as long as there was dessert. Normal. Beautifully, perfectly normal. Sarah climbed into the driver's seat and looked at them in the rearview mirror. Her children. Safe. Whole. Good humans who understood that wealth meant responsibility, that privilege meant service, that having more than you need meant sharing. They'd learned that from her. And she'd learned it from Robin Williams. A man she'd never met who'd believed in strangers. Who'd hidden a fortune hoping someone worthy would find it. Who'd transformed his sadness into beauty and then trusted that beauty to someone who needed rescuing. The cycle continued. Her children would pass these lessons to their children. Who would pass them forward? The ripple effects of one man's choice and one woman's courage spreading outward through time. Sarah started the car and drove her family home. Past the museum where Robin's art lived. Past the neighborhoods where the Robin Williams Project was saving lives. Past the shelter where they'd once lived, now closed and replaced with permanent supportive housing. Past all the evidence that choices mattered. That generosity rippled. That broken people could still leave beautiful gifts. She pulled into their driveway, looked at their house, solid and safe in theirs, and felt something she'd spent 10 years searching for. Not vindication. Not certainty that she'd made the right choice. But peace with the choice she'd made. Acceptance that it had been good enough. That she had been good enough. That Robin Williams' faith in her had been justified. That night, Sarah pulled out the letter one more time. The one addressed to Sarah, whoever you are. She read the final lines slowly, letting them sink in deeper than ever before. Stay strong. Trust yourself. And remember that you found this for a reason. Not by accident. By design. By design. Not by luck or chance or random circumstance. By design. Robin Williams had designed a test. Had created a situation that would reveal someone's character. Had trusted that the right person would pass through desperation into generosity. Would choose sharing over hoarding. Would be brave enough to give away a fortune. Sarah had passed. Not perfectly. Not without mistakes or doubts or suffering. But she'd passed. And in passing, she'd proven something Robin had needed to believe. That people were basically good. That desperation didn't always breed selfishness. That beauty could inspire generosity even in the darkest circumstances. She'd given him that gift, retroactively. Had validated his faith in humanity. Had proved that his test was fair, his trust was justified, his hope was real. That seemed like a fair trade. $295 million in art for proof that human beings could still surprise you. That kindness could survive hardship. That beauty belonged to everyone, even when it was owned by someone. Sarah folded the letter and put it back in its frame. She turned off the lights and went to bed in the house she'd bought with Robin Williams' gift. The modest, normal house where her children were safe and whole and good. She closed her eyes and imagined him one last time. Not sad. Not struggling. But at peace. Finally at peace. Because his art was safe. His legacy was secure. His trust had been honored. And the woman he'd never met but had believed in anyway had proven worthy of that belief. That was worth more than $295 million. That was worth everything. Sarah slept without nightmares for the first time in a decade. And in her dreams, she walked through a house filled with light and art and laughter. And in the doorway, barely visible but smiling, stood a man she'd never met but would spend her life honoring. "Thank you," she whispered. "For trusting me. For believing in strangers. For proving that beauty endures and hope persists and second chances are real. Thank you for everything. Thank you so much for watching until the end. If you love this story, check out the other videos on your screen now. I think you'll really enjoy them. And don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. See you in the next story.